Hello everyone and welcome to our series on practice management for qualified financial advisors with Amit. As a part of this series, we're going to pick up aspects about financial advisory practice, and Amit here is going to help us share some insights that will help you manage your practice more efficiently. Today, we're going to be talking about a very crucial and an important aspect of financial advisory, which is empathy. Well, empathy is not just a nice to have quality when it comes to the profession of a financial advisor, but it's a lot more important than you think it could be, because at the end of the day, what matters is to build trust and understand the needs of your client. I would like to start our discussion with a very crucial question. Often when clients take financial decisions, they're burdened with anxiety.
Right.
So how can a qualified financial advisor cultivate the practice of having empathy as a part of their conversations and understanding what the client is going through, and then help them overcome that and take the right financial decision?
Anooj, this is a very important question, and empathy as a quality is, as they say in that popular proverb, putting yourself in somebody else's shoes. Now, so often that we've seen that when two people are conversing, one is in a hurry to respond, to reply, rather than patiently listening. The first step in empathy is to give enough time for the client to open up and speak out. The moment I interrupt the client, then the client feels even more anxious. And we've seen it so often, when you go to a doctor, when you go to a financial advisor, any such professional, the client comes out of the room and says, the guy doesn't listen to me. It only adds to that anxiety. So the first step, as I said, is better listening. Now, for that purpose, patience needs to be cultivated at the financial advisor's level. The moment you are under pressure to get something done, the mind does not allow you to wait for the other person to finish.
Right. Yeah, makes sense. That's when people say, the difference between hearing and listening.
Absolutely.
And it becomes very, very important for you to do a conversation.
Right.
Rather than putting across your point.
Right.
So tell me something, Amit bhai. How does an empathetic understanding of a client's, fear against market volatility or economic downturns affect the qualified financial advisor's way of giving a financial advice, or the financial advice itself for the client?
There's a very, very common situation. Something happens in the external world, what we call the market. The client reads it in the newspaper or watches it on a television and then gets impacted by that. The fact here is how much of that is news and how much of that is noise needs to be segregated. And this is where a good qualified financial advisor can make a real difference, because the conversation between the advisor and the client better be about the client's life rather than the market. The market is going to do its ups and downs. That's by nature, it is volatile. The advisor's job is to sort of ensure that there are enough shock absorbers in the client's financial plan so that external ups and down does not impact the financial life of the client as much. Having a plan is one part, and keeping the reassurance intact is the second part.
Right.
And that's where, because we talked about conversation, the conversation should be brought back every single time about the client's life.
Right.
Oh, the market fell by 10%. Yes, it did. But Anuj, that's not going to impact your life because you provided for that.
Right.
You've taken care of your short-term and medium-term requirements. So this is likely to happen. Yes, it's, sometimes it is disturbing, but it's not going to impact your life. The moment I bring that conversation back to your financial life, your financial goals, then it's possible to bring the anxiety levels down on account of market volatility.
Right.
Having said that, the plan must take care of the contingency requirements, the insurance planning, the short-term goals. Once somebody has done that, then playing it down helps a lot, because there cannot be a gap between what I'm saying and what happens in real life.
Yeah.
So if the market fall results into me not being able to meet some of my short-term goals, then whatever empathetic language my financial advisor has used loses meaning beyond a point.
Right.
So the plan and the communication both need to be in sync. And it's eventually about life. Money is not an end by itself, it's a means to an end called a good quality life.
Right. Yeah. No, very, very rightly said. I'd like to pick the shock observant part of your response, because a qualified financial advisor should not play the role of a news reporter in the life of the client, rather play the role of a shock observant.
Yeah. So just to add to that point, a lot of times the intermediaries in the financial market, I'll not call them the financial advisors, I'm just using the word intermediaries, they play on the fear of the client. And a lot of times fear-based sales tactics have worked, but it may help get a sale. It does not help cool down the anxiety of the client.
Right. And also sustain.
And sustain. And that's where you initially mentioned the word trust.
Yeah.
The moment you use fear as your weapon, trust is something that you don't win.
Right. Very rightly put. What you spoke about just now, Amit Bhai, also highlights the importance for transparency. And when it comes to transparency, it's a very important aspect of a qualified financial advisor and a client's relationship. Now, when a client tries to probe into, the transparency aspect and asks questions, especially let's say around fees or, specific recommendations that the qualified financial advisor has for the client. For example, how are you compensated for the recommendations you have for me? Or are there products that could get you better, compensation if you recommend them to me? When let's say such questions are presented to a qualified financial advisor, how can a qualified financial advisor stay true to its purpose and help gain the trust and transparency with the client, yet being empathetic?
Actually, empathy and transparency would always go hand in hand. You can't win empathy through opacity, because eventually the truth comes out.
Right.
And in today's world where information is available aplenty, it's impossible for one to hide beyond a particular point. And that's where the elephant in the room must be acknowledged. And that elephant in the room in this conversation is, how are you going to be compensated?
Correct.
Now, a lot of times I've seen that the intermediaries, again I'm using the word intermediaries, they are afraid of divulging how they make money and how much. The fact is, you are adding huge value to the client's life, and for that you are getting compensated. If you are able to establish that value in terms of the change that you make, the positive change that you make in the client's life, then client won't mind that you also make money. Because at some stage, when the client understands, because at some stage when the client understands that I need Anooj, the client says Anooj must make money, because if he makes money, he will be in the business, and so long as he's in the business, I'm safe.
Yeah.
So transparency becomes critical there. Hiding doesn't help. In fact, there are regulations which make it mandatory to disclose all the earnings and conflicts of interest.
Right.
But irrespective of the regulations, it's a sort of best practice to tell the client that, okay, while I'm recommending these things, I'm making money. But the best part is, and I've come across some real high quality financial advisors who've gone and told their clients, don't invest right now because your cash flow does not permit.
Right.
And if the client does not invest, the intermediary, whether it is a mutual fund distributor, an investment advisor, or whoever, when the client does not invest, this person does not make money.
Right.
And still they've gone ahead and told the client, please don't do this.
Right.
I come across cases where somebody was exploring taking an education loan for one's daughter's education, and while discussing this with the financial advisor says, you've gone crazy because you invested for this particular goal, withdraw money from there, don't take a loan. Right? Now that's empathy. And in such case, if you tell the client that if I sell a product to you, I'm going to make money, or if I recommend something, I'm going to make money, client would say, yeah, you do it only if I need it, otherwise you're not going to do that.
Right. Fair enough. And I think that's where the regulation also plays a very important role, right? And that's what the regulators are trying to do with the entire RIA and the distributors space. So let's talk about some common client challenges that they face. So let's say if a client is facing a major life change, financially, and they have to deal with it. So how can the qualified financial advisor help the client navigate through such a situation emotionally using empathy? How can the qualified financial advisor help the client take the right decisions?
So let's take some real examples. So let's say somebody who is 55 or 56 years of age originally planned to retire at 60, but now laid off from the job. So while one was building the retirement corpus so far, now one cannot continue to build further because the job is gone. And I'm specifically mentioning 55 because that's not a time when it's easy to get another job. Right. In other words, it's like retirement that came early, not planned early.
Right.
If that's the situation, the advisor must reassess the whole situation, numerically check how good or bad the situation is. Need not discuss the numbers openly or at least in details, but the consequences of those numbers must be discussed. And in such a situation, is it possible to simply go ahead with the current financial situation, the wealth that one has accumulated so far, or is there a part-time gig that may be required?
Right.
Instead of hiding behind anything, it's better to bring it out in the open. Let's look at another situation. Somebody was investing for a certain purpose and something happened. Let's say a market crash and the value is down. The goal is now only just 3 years away.
Right.
Go out and tell the person that this has happened. We might have to reshuffle some of the investments so that this goal is taken care of, and the goals which are far in future, we still have some time to recoup and we can do some readjustments.
Right.
Having that conversation becomes important, and that also brings back the same point of transparency again.
Right.
This is the reality. Discuss it out in the open. Don't assume that the clients are not smart enough. They may not understand the investment product. They may not understand the investment mathematics. They do understand what happens to their life.
Correct.
And somewhere the gut feel also tells them that I've got to be ready for a worse outcome. It's better for the QFA to bring that discussion out. Yes, keep reassuring that I am with you in this entire journey and we'll get out of this together. I can't tell the client that, okay, this is your problem.
Yeah.
No, this is our problem. And we'll solve it together.
Right. Very, very truly said. When it comes to planning your finances, looking forward in the future and then planning for it today, most of the times a lot of clients, they feel overwhelmed with this entire aspect of planning for your finances, right? Because everything is out in the open. Or they also feel hesitant when it comes to dealing with financial institutions as a part of planning for their finances, right? So how should a qualified financial advisor deal with this feeling of being overwhelmed or being hesitant when it comes to financial planning, and working with financial institutions?
Interesting. There are multiple factors that contribute to this feeling of overwhelm. Number one, a lot of times we feel that finance is not my subject. I can't do number crunching. Lot of times the institution appears to be a non-person entity.
Yep.
Okay, so it's not an individual. Now, these are some of the, of course, there's a fear of unknown. Now, this is where a good qualified financial advisor can step in and say, this is a human-to-human talk. While I represent a large institution, but I am as vulnerable as you are. And you know what? I've gone through some of the same challenges in the past. And in my mind, I've faced the same fear. I've faced the same concern. There have been turbulences. And sometimes I've taken wrong decisions. Incidentally, I also happen to be in this business for long, and that long experience has allowed me to witness many other clients who have also gone through similar challenges.
Right.
Essentially, I'm telling you that you are not alone to feel it this way.
Okay.
I'm also simultaneously highlighting that I've been there, done that. So don't worry, you are in safe hands.
Right.
So when I'm giving you reassurance, I have a storybook of mine.
Right.
I know how to get out of it because I've been able to, I've been fortunate enough to be able to help many clients get out of similar situation.
Right. You've done it once, you can do it again.
Exactly. And this kind of talk, this kind of discussion is good to give a lot of comfort. Now let's add to that further. While I am alone, I might have spent 5 years in the industry or 3 years in the industry, but the institution that backs me has a collective experience of hundreds of years.
Right.
Collectively, we have handled 5,000, 10,000, 15,000 clients.
Yeah.
And that collective might is available to help you.
Yeah.
So I'm just simply turning that institution into a bunch of individuals rather than something that appears to be mechanic. And that's how I would take the conversation forward.
Right. Makes sense. Just on a very natural note, Amit bhai, if a qualified financial advisor is just starting out, let's say with their career into financial advisory, and if being empathetic is not their natural calling, how can they work on it? How can they get to that situation? Because this business is all about trust. Right? And if you can't help gain your clients' trust, you cannot build your business. So somebody who's just starting off and being empathetic is not their natural calling. We know empathy is important, but how can they work towards it? How can they understand their clients better and help them feel more comfortable?
That's a tough question actually, because as we started, empathy is about putting yourself in somebody else's shoes. If I can't feel what you are feeling, then building that empathy becomes difficult. But a couple of things that we need to keep in mind. Number one, your client is a human being. deal with a human. Don't look at the size of the portfolio. Don't look at the designation on the card. Don't look at the net worth of the person. Talk to a human being. That's number one. Number two, listen. Number three, ask questions which matter to you if you were in the client's situation. What kind of question that you would like to hear? Avoid jargons as much as possible. And finally, so long as possible, keep the client's interest ahead of yours. I think these are a few basic rules that I would say. And of course, don't be in a hurry to close the deal. Right? Wait it out. Give your 100%, and then the client would reciprocate.
Amit bhai, thank you so much for sharing all your valuable insights today. It's not easy when you talk about empathy. As simple as you feel, it means that all that you have to do is just feel what your client is facing, right? But it's very difficult to practice when it comes to reality. So thank you so much for sharing all your valuable insights. To all our viewers and listeners, I'm sure whatever Amit bhai has shared with us today in this episode, you've learned something new when it comes to managing your practice more effectively and being more empathetic towards your clients. For somebody who's watching this video or listening to this podcast, who's planning to get into this advisory profession, who's new into this profession, I'm sure this is a great starting point. Be empathetic, focus on creating trust, focus on building trust, focus on being transparent with your clients, and the sky is the limit. Thank you so much, everybody. We'll see you in the next episode.